I'm going to play a video. It's on screen, I think. Should still be. I noticed a ton of copium this morning from, well, if you know, first name begins with I. It's pathetic. Yeah, oh well. Anyway, this is Arthur Conley. I've tagged him on the title to my video. Hopefully you can click on that. I will put a link into this video so you can go and find out for yourself. In fact, I'm going to post that link. I'll put a couple of coloured dots next to it before I start. Nobody's blocked. Nobody I've ever spoken to verbally is blocked. Oh, hold on. Let me just put those dots in first, so you can find the link. I don't expect anybody to be bothered in. I was going to stream to Rumble. That's I'll put a pair of eyes there for once. Yeah, I don't even expect anybody to come over. I'm not looking for internet clout or fame or any of that garbage. Yeah. Honestly, I can't believe the dunces I'm seeing on YouTube. The usual suspects. Right. The link for the StreamYard is in there, by the way, it's pinned. I'm going to listen to this.
A horse's mouth. So when I ask you, is it the small... This is all directly from the horse's mouth. So when I ask you, is it the small hats, or the anti-Christian sewer dwellers, or the Frankists, or the Bolsheviks? Look, I have to keep this YouTube friendly once again because there's no free speech on this platform. My answer is, in so little words, yes. And I'll tell you why 2% of the population is at the root of 90% of institutional problems in North America in the first half of this rant. And I'll tell you in the second half why you should move on.
I really couldn't care less about North America particularly. There's a lot of people over there that are decent, you know. I don't hate all Americans. I just hate America as a whole, as a corporate so-called body. Frankly, it makes me want to puke. And it's not that much better in this country or any other. Yeah. And we know what USA are funding, don't we, over in a certain country over in the Middle East. Yeah, and I'm supposed to look up to that. And Sam, you know, I mean, he actually expects to be respected. Really? I'm not sure I expect to be respected. It's sort of nice. Not something I'm used to, really. But anyway, I'm not going to go on a whinge.
This is all directly from the horse's mouth. Right. So when I ask you, is it the small hats, or the anti-Christian sewer dwellers, or the Frankists, or the Bolsheviks? Look, I have to keep this YouTube friendly once again because there's no free speech on this platform. My answer is, in so little words, yes. And I'll tell you why 2% of the population is at the root of 90% of institutional problems in North America in the first half of this rant. And I'll tell you in the second half why you should move on for the sake of your own sovereignty and entirely check out of the system altogether. So first things first, what does the Talmud, their holiest book, their New Testament, and source for their moral conditioning since childbirth have to say about us mere human beings, whom they refer to as goys? The Talmud holds that only they, those who shall not be named, are true human beings, and Gentiles, us, goyim, which means cattle or beasts, no different than dogs or property with no autonomy, below second-class citizenry or slaves, we are to be utilized as their playthings. And I've compiled actual excerpts from the rabbinic teachings. The following are shocking but exact quotes from the various books that they believe in. So we first have Sanhedrin 59a. Murdering goyim, meaning your family and yourself, is like killing a wild animal, something to be hunted in jest. Because as written in Avodah Zarah 26b, even the best of the Gentiles should be killed. And this is why in Sanhedrin 59a, a goy who pries into the law, which means the Talmud, is guilty of death. And then they reiterate in Liber David 37, to communicate anything to a goy about our religious relations would be equal to the killing of all of them. For if the goyim knew what we teach about them, they would kill us openly. They literally do not want you knowing their belief system. And I'll explain to you in a little bit why that is. Yebamoth 11b, sexual intercourse with a little girl is permitted if she is 3 years of age. Shabuth Hag 6d, they may swear falsely by using subterfuge wording. In other words, lying is permitted, which is why it's pointless actually debating or conversing with them in a good faith conversation, because all they have is manipulative double talking, constantly exhibited on the world's political stage, for example. Hikoth Akum X1, do not save Goyim in danger of death. In the same excerpt, show no mercy to the Goyim. We don't deserve any mercy. Choshenham 388:15. If it can be proven that someone has given the money of Israelites to the Goyim, a way must be found after prudent consideration to wipe him off the face of the earth. Sazaloth Utsabat, the book of Joridiah 17. They should and must make a false oath when the Goyim asks if our books contain anything about them. Baba Nasia 114. They are human beings, but the nation of the world are not human beings, but beasts. Simeon Hadarson, FOL 56D. When the Messiah comes, every one of them will have 2,800 slaves. Nidrash Talpiath, P225. Jehovah created the whatever you want to call them, the non-chosen in human form so that they will not have to be served by beasts. The non-chosen is consequently an animal in human form and condemned to serve the chosen day and night. Abadora Sarah 37a. A Gentile girl who is 3 years old can be violated. Shulchan Aruch, Joridiah 122. A chosen is forbidden to drink from a glass of wine which a Gentile has touched, because the touch has made the wine unclean. This is how they feel about us. Now, rather than go on and on about this consistent pattern recognition that is salient throughout the text, we must unpack and predict what this implies to North America and the inevitable collapse of the Western Empire in front of us today. So firstly, understand that every culture and people have an underlying worldview that they totally can afford. Some aren't conscious of it, but the reality is we still have a programming based on a religious structure. And for the chosen people that cannot be named publicly, of course, segregation and discrimination is one of their core values. If you want to climb the ladder of this faith, you must fully embrace this tenet against other people that are regarded as outsiders. And I'm not one of these low IQ, repetitive, meme posting political LARPers you see on Twitter. The vast majority of these new quote unquote anti-Semitic influencers who are nothing but cloud chasing social rejects who are trying to channel their bitterness onto the external world. Their heart is not in the right place, all those people. Even if you argue that they're normalizing these conversations, they are actually a part of the problem because they're just doing nothing but commiserating more hatred, to be honest. I actually understand the psychology behind these Chosenites, and there's no mystery for me on the matter. I see it as clear as day. I'm not just trying to rage bait and create more doom scrolling content. So with all that being said, I want to walk you guys through an example that I was thinking about. This might come out of totally left field for many of you, but stick with this, okay? Hear me out. Do you guys remember the Columbine Massacre? The tragic school shooting that has become an iconic symbol of American culture for gun control propaganda in conjunction to the unstable social consequences of bullying and antagonistic peer pressure. We all know of this, right? And it was one of the largest first school shootings in American history. I think the year was 1999, right? And a dozen were killed and like 20 or 30 were injured. I can't remember it exactly. Well, when you study the lives of Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, both of these seniors in high school were grossly unpopular, often mocked, and failed creating any type of connection with their classmates. Perhaps we'll say 109 times over. They felt forever castigated. And when they met each other, they felt this much deeper communication and commiseration because of this. Because being casted as outcasts and black sheeps together sort of emboldened each other, if that makes sense, right? The ostracization of both of them being in the same circumstances created this unholy alliance, and they became thick as thieves, if that makes sense. What did they do in turn? They had sex with each other. And this isn't a trivial joke, because if you want to understand power, you have to understand religion, money, and sex. Those are the three human symbols that dictate the world in all of history. And those are always going to be the nodes that people utilize to understand the true story and intentions of every narrative. And sex, above all else, if you can step back and look at it from a bird's eye view, beyond the feel good brain chemistry, is a practice that creates bonding and unification. So it makes sense as a political and social tool as well, if you put yourself in the shoes of conquerors looking at human beings in a utilitarian manner. That's why, for example, the 300 Spartans defeated 10,000 Persians, because they were all heavily encouraged to have sex with one another. It's wrong today, but if you just Google the sacred band of Thebes, that was actually the reason they won the Battle of Thermopylae in 480 BCE. They had a deep alliance from an intertwined loyalty, a loyalty that was analogous to an unbreakable chain with no visibly weak links, because they were that connected to another from that type of intimacy. Now, that is repulsive to the Christian morality, rightfully so. And we've evolved to understand the dysfunction that is born out of homosexuality, although we are digressing every day. But the point is that these worldviews are born from a time where societies were much more disconnected. So tribal warfare was in much more higher contrast. So that's how the Columbine kids felt. They felt totally displaced from the outside world and totally alienated from the public square that they were forced to attend. And when they had sex with each other with an atheistic morality that does not believe in a higher good that can heal and forgive, their sacrament became genocidal. Now, what made this even more diabolical is when human beings commit to criminality or atrociousness together, their bonds actually become even greater than the sexual act. That sexual act is actually a gateway for that. And because they were literally 2% of the school, so to speak, or, 2 students out of their entire class, accurately so, you can begin to see exactly why these chosen people have a warped sense of sexuality and continue to separate themselves from all of the other worldview religions by displaying this grandiose heinousness. When you are a historically diaspora population, as in a homeless civilization, you just have to double down in your self-flagellation via self-narrative. And you need to just constantly tell yourself it's because you're so special. You're prosecuted because you're chosen, not because you might have done wrong by destroying the system of others on repeat, God forbid. It's like the peculiar and strange physiognomy teenager in high school who never gets invited out and always feels left behind. It's tragic on one hand, but if he wasn't so socially awkward and stopped victimizing at every turn, maybe he'd make some new friends for a change. And that's exactly what the Columbine shooters felt and had inside of their hearts to take revenge on the world. They took the Samson option into their own hands. So, of course, with this worldview, you will utilize sexual blackmailing and honeypotting at every turn. Of course, with this worldview, you feel justified and even entitled to wipe out an entire population of, I can't even name the victims at hand here in Gaza, gleefully casting them out of their own homes and blowing off the limbs of their children away. And of course, with this worldview, you will grant special privileges to insiders and unethically warp your sense of hypocrisy against outsiders without any shame whatsoever. Of course, none of this actually surprises me once you study the text. Of course, this is how it is. All of these chosen people, all they can do at this point is double down because they've simply gone too far. There's literally no going back. If you aren't seeing the mass child genocide that they commit daily with pride, if you haven't seen the Telegram chat groups posting toddlers without arms and legs, and they're literally sexualizing them with jokes and mocking them at every turn, you're simply blind to the ignorance that they have clearly chosen their way. And if you're going to still give them the benefit of the doubt in that regard, you're just ignorant to the situation. After 9/11, the attack of the USS Liberty, presidential assassinations, Epstein Island, seeing the funding and money laundering of the military-industrial complex through their political handlers, the blatant disdain they have for true independent Christianity, the funding behind open society, who pushes and fights to keep our borders wide open, Planned Parenthood encouraging women to become antinatalist harpies. The ownership of MindGeek, which is the overmind behind all the porn websites in North America, targeting specifically children. If you look at the algorithm and engineering behind the scenes, all of the Hollywood establishment and conservative Inc. political influencer plans, all of these censorship organizations like the ADL or SPLC, and the fact that they're only able to do all of this because we give them $40 billion a year. We're literally paying them to be parasitic towards us. Then you begin to see the root of all these problems at the institutional level. You begin to see the corruption in our leadership, and you begin to see that the corruption of all our institutions will never be honorable. It is based on the tenets that I started this video with, the core values that all of this is permeating from. If you look at all these concentric circles and everything I just listed, at the core nucleus is their worldview and religious structure. Because if your tribe truly believes to be totally ousted as an alien people who have also been forever brainwashed as a persecuted class in conjunction to having this twisted moral sense of sexuality and bonding from shared criminality, of course you will do whatever it takes to manipulate and bend every outsider for the preservation of your people. Because in their shoes, it's the right thing to do. Bloodshed, sacrifice, world hunger, poverty, homelessness, and absolute chaos is all a part of the game. So, once again, we return to this question. Is it the small hats? Yes, it is. But the good news I want to share with you all is that it doesn't mean you have to kowtow your sovereignty to their dark bidding and cultural programming. That's the good news, is that you do still have the power ultimately onto whether they actually affect your lives at that level. I know if you're spending all day on social media, you're going to end up feeling inevitably a sense of emboldening against this endless doom scrolling, right? If I'm here all day, it's going to seem hopeless because it's all hatred, anger, and commiseration on how broken the system is. But I just want to encourage you that you don't have to adopt and practice the same evil that you abhor, which is what the vast majority of these ethno-nationalist types are actually doing online with this political LARPing. It's actually incredibly pathetic to anybody who has a semblance of a positive and successful life outside the screen. That is a tragic situation here, that for the vast majority of normies, the solution to defeat evil has been to become that very evil. And the delusions are becoming beyond deafening for me. The real solution is to first establish sovereignty inside your bones. That is making sure you're not consuming their seed oil and grain sludge-based WEF diet. Literal poison, by the way, if you read their agenda. That is making sure you're not living in an atheistic and godless community. There will be no altruism if you live outside of that circle. That is making sure your children aren't attending public school, obviously, which was all designed by those same architects. Speaking of which, it's very funny to me how many times I've met people who anonymously are screaming from the rooftops on their accounts. All these Anon accounts that I've actually met through conference attendance or invite-based social gatherings. And I've met all of these guys with these Julius Caesar profile photos or some kind of Greek or Roman statuesque figure. And behind the screen, they're like disgusting and super fat. And I can't even tell you how embarrassed I would be if I had their existence. And so many of them have gotten vaccinated during COVID-19. And so many of them are encouraging their kids to try to attempt these top-ranked universities. It's absolute hypocritical nonsense that they have accepted as a metric of success because they themselves are still hopelessly brainwashed and consenting to the same programming that they apparently resent. It makes no sense. So in their private lives, they have become totally obedient slaves, but in the public square, they bitch and moan whilst acting like they're a part of some counterculture by propounding this Nazi propaganda, meme culture, without ever showing their face as well, by the way. It's all this revolution-based pony talk just to embarrassingly glaze one another. I'm getting kind of sick of the bullshit, and nobody wants to grow up and look at reality. It's frankly just unhappy people who can't admit that they've been duped. Admit it, we've all been duped, and let's move on. The people who actually see this problem in their bones are living out the solution. Like, I live totally free regardless of what happens to the world. My house is full of love and light. The walls are full of beautiful paintings and masterpieces. Everyone here is living internally in accordance to God's blueprint. We're all high off animal fat and cholesterol. We all feel deeply connected to the grand design, and we're able to appreciate the blessing that life is, which is an experience that we've been given an opportunity to actualize. Regardless whether or not they're in control or not, this is still a blessing. And if you can't see that, then you're just bitching and moaning. All the institutions are corrupt and abusive. So check out as much as you humanly possibly can. And you'd be surprised how many people feel the same way that you do. You'll be surprised how many people share that exact sentiment. They're seeing all this Twitter noise and they also find it nauseating and self-flagellating to the nth degree. In reality, it's almost as if we're attending a circus together and like we want the performers to do well. Like I don't want the act to fall apart, because of that narcissistic director who's having a bad day. But if they botch the act, we shouldn't let it actually affect or offend us. I'm fine because I fully understand that this system is a joke and clown show. We're living in absolute clown world, and the circus is being led clearly astray into oblivion. I've sort of accepted it. People call me black pill, but I'm honestly more free than they'll ever be. And the faster you realize that these conventions are actually traps to appease you with a fake sense of success and accomplishment, the faster you'll be living in accordance to your values and not in accordance to their fake morality and the design that was built to kill you and destroy any sense of authenticity. Fuck being patriotic. Fuck being a real man. Fuck worshiping this celebrity culture. Fuck all of these industry planet conservative influencers. Fuck our world leaders. None of them are good. I promise. The faster you don't care about appeasing those who have been duped by these people, I'm talking about your friends, families, and peers, the faster you can focus on what matters and live a happy life. This is exactly what they don't want. So yes, the game is rigged and in the favor of these people, and nothing you do will ever convince them to let up their power. Understand that. Don't live in delusion. All you can do is think and act outside of the animal farm that they have created. It's them. And it's always been them. So what are you going to do about it? Might make a lot of you a little uncomfortable. I want to talk. All right. Hi. I want to talk about something that might make a lot of you a little uncomfortable. I want to talk about the most insecure people on the entire planet. The only demographic that has Telegram groups dedicated to taking down accounts and censoring free speech. And I would say further than any leftist organization funded by the small hats in the Middle East. This demographic that I actually won't say throughout this entire video because of YouTube policy and their submission to the avalanche of fecal matter. This demographic takes quite a bit of pride in orchestrating takedowns onto other people that are totally based on slander and unfounded bullshit. They are a people of scamming and lying. They are the demographic that literally has poo-throwing festivals, who worship and applaud the deconstruction of all high-trust societies. They are the perfect example, actually, if we're going to be a matter of fact and honest, of what happens when a culture abandons their monotheistic and universal loving faith due to their own dark and twisted pagan worshiping culture. This demographic gang rapes and assaults all women of all races at every turn. They are the most malnourished and have the most overcompensating men on the entire planet due to their fear of animal products and consuming anything from their sacred cow. On and on and on. I can honestly go forever talking about these people. I'm talking about that specific demographic that is being imported in huge droves into all of North America, poisoning the once fresh scent captured by the United States and Canada. I'm talking about the people who despise all of cleanliness and, to be frank, aren't able to look inside of a mirror to see where they rank in the sexual pecking order, even though women of all races, including their own, want nothing to do with them. These people, whom I will not mention once again because of their incomparable insecurity to censor open truth seeking, because deep down inside, they know the conclusion of what is implied about them if they take any of open thought to its logical conclusion, are unassimilatable bioweapons destroying the social fabric molded by Christendom and the overarching values of traditionalism that are born out of Christian thinking. They smell, they sound like Jar Jar Binks, and on average, they're the ugliest of all the races. And I'm getting kind of tired of seeing these people behave with such arrogance and vehemence. I'm just a straight up and honest guy, okay? I'm not trying to offend anyone, but I've had a pretty good sample size of fatigue from blacks, the Chinese, even the small hats, but I'm kind of totally fatigued from this demographic. Their insecurity is just so confounding, and the projection is so telling. And they don't realize that by trying to censor all open dialogue, the world is only realizing how inferior they truly are. All of this together has granted a very pathetic place in my heart for these people. And honestly, I just don't want anything to do with these people. So if they just leave me alone, then I'll leave them alone to eat their own fecal matter. But they can't help themselves because of their twisted religious worldview, in conjunction to how malnourished they are, and the fact that every day they look outside the window, they see nothing but degeneracy and filth everywhere, because that's who they are internally as well. Filthy subhumans that have no class, with a wide and open and loose sexuality where they literally have statues of homosexual orgies plastered onto their buildings that they venerate, because the internal, it will always manifest externally in both their art and the self-expression of the ecology that they live in. And look, I don't actually have anything against this demographic, but when you lie, cheat, slander, dirty up, and believe in such ugly images of apostasy with accelerated consistency, a man like me is going to speak his mind eventually, sooner or later, because they're just becoming a growing problem, and they're bringing their third world demonic culture with them. All of that is also being imported through them. I'm all for people recognizing the universal spirit that we all share, and I don't mean it in that Hindu Brahman sense. That is all a bunch of new age woo-woo from a bunch of glorified homeless soners who call themselves holy men on their streets. They're taking that essence of consciousness, that truth and religiosity, and bastardizing it with their anti-human and anti-naturalist culture. But the point is that this demographic does not want to assimilate whatsoever. So what's the point of having good faith if the trash will only be littered across the Serengeti? And if dirtiness basically needs to be further normalized onto our daily lives, we have to accept it. That's what I'm saying. I'm just not for it. And I wouldn't even care to say anything if they weren't so censorship oriented. Like literally all of my peers have experienced a wave of insecure rage from these doo-doo lovers. And nobody wants to say this, but again, I'm not speaking from hate. I'm speaking from pattern recognition that have scaled across everyone who's trying to speak their minds towards truth. So at the risk of looking like an uninclusive bigot, I don't really want anything to do with these people who are immune to reason and being open-minded whatsoever. There's zero change within their hearts, zero change to do so. And I've seriously tried to give this demographic a chance on repeat. And once again, I could be talking about white Europeans or East Asians, by the way. Who knows? What I do know is that nobody going forward will be able to trust these people because all they do is exhibit nastiness due to the inability to laugh at themselves. And if you can't laugh at yourselves, it means you can't handle any criticism. It would have never gone this far in the first place if they weren't so damn insecure. I don't care if there's several billions of them that might be offended by this sentiment. They literally live in filth and want you to accept their lifestyle. No, they want you to respect it. They want you to look upon their filth and the way they live as good. And I'm personally just fatigued by these very peculiar animals, beyond malnourished, living in destitute poverty, dedicated to harassment and censorship, scamming and cheating the elderly in their own glee, which is a big part of the economy, by the way. No sense of class or unifying their morality and their so-called faith. And most importantly, an inability to laugh at themselves, which is the most revealing. Because if you can't make fun of it, in other words, if you can't chuckle and keep things light in jest, then it's bullshit. Anyways, that's it. I just wanted to get that off my chest. The convictions and noise made by 99% of influencers are that of a dying animal, crying out to be put out of their miserable existence. Common to see the most vociferous and ugly voices, the ones always screaming at you, are the most biochemically unsound and unstable human beings. Former drug addicts and alcoholics, social outcasts who have a mile-long record, childless and totally unhappy anonymous keyboard warriors who should learn to talk to women for a change and don't know how to get out of their mom's basement. Brother, I've seen grown men in their late 40s, also through their early 50s, on that Apple Mego, that webcam shuffling platform, and they're on to basically hatefully call black kids as an 11 to 14-year-old children just to get viral attention into the toxic mainstream. And these traumatized buffoons are totally unaware of how disgustingly lost they are. They believe they are utilizing comedic effect and calling themselves revolutionary nationalists by freaking out on random innocent children. But to happy people who sit with a very different psychological framework and table altogether, they just look purely bitter and rejected. They just look like a bunch of loser rejects. Similarly, I've seen all these health channels from malnourished vegans feeding their children the same poison that caused them to be so dysregulated and low energy in the first place. They actually believe that they're eating optimally and moving in altruism in consideration of the feelings of other animals, which is also, by the way, incredibly disconnected from nature. Or I've seen bodybuilders blatantly encouraging drug use in the shape of steroids or testosterone enhancement, because the bottom line is, whatever the opinions held in the public square, they don't actually matter whatsoever, because all of these people are dying animals suffering from a nutrient-absent diet and the medical industry. I don't care what political beliefs you hold. I don't care if you're still a brainwashed Trump-supporting boomer, or if you're preaching about racial realism and convinced that you're one of the enlightened ones, which is a joke. I don't care if you purport to understand hypergamy and female nature as a red pill-oriented content consumer. I don't care about any of these opinions whatsoever, because you don't even have personal sovereignty if you're unhealthy. And so many of you, unfortunately, believe that being healthy means being body dysmorphic and being muscle-bound, especially for men, right? Personally, I would rather be a chronic drinker than an overcompensating meathead. Although they're both lost in different ways, so to speak, one believes that they're actually being virtuous. Being healthy is being happy and stable, okay? Being stress-free and content with oneself. The gym-addicted slave who works out every single day and eats brown rice, bland chicken breast and broccoli 6 times a day with his little go-to whey protein shake, he has never integrated his masculinity since high school. The actuality is that he still feels bullied at his core, so instead of processing his emotions, he's coping with this braggadocious form of masculinity. Because it's much easier to lift metal with other depressed people who are listening to tantrum-based music than to actually confront yourself in the metaphorical mirror, so to speak, and realize that you simply never had a vulnerable and loving relationship with your father. It's actually very similar to Korean culture, where all of these parents are found consistently shaming and guilt-tripping their children at every turn. They always tell them how they're working so hard for them and how they should never squash their academic opportunities, but it's actually just a distraction from just hugging their children and admitting that they're both in a broken world, just loving their kids, because that takes courage. And everyone today is biochemically hyper anxious. Simply put, being healthy is being happy, not lying to yourself with status obsessed chasing in this clout oriented culture as everyone is blatantly doing. Are you able to sit by yourself with your own thoughts and feel high? For the majority of you, the answer is an unmitigating no. For the vast majority of the human population, they still believe that the medical industry is here to serve the people and heal them, which is hilarious because many people actually can see and understand that big pharma is designed to poison us with vaccines and pharmaceuticals, but they don't understand that it's actually the entire medical industry which is dedicated to concealing symptoms and never curing the root problem of all of these illnesses, which is why people who take every FDA-approved multivitamin, every updated vaccine shot, follows the Illuminati-created food pyramid, and chases the college-university scam hierarchy are the most unhappy and brain-dead zombies that exist on the entire planet. And a lot of you understand this at the level of vaccines as well, which is a start. But the entire system And the entire ideology of healthcare embedded into our system is a web of lies to decrease your lifespan and to increase your neuroticism. Like, technically speaking, shouldn't all these militant people who put good faith into our healthcare leaders be the most energy-filled and robust personalities? But they never are, because they're all dying animals who will see in 20 to 30 years their lifespan shortened than anyone who is able to avoid these modern diseases created by the medical industry. All of these diseases, by the way, that were more or less not prevalent only 4 generations ago. The reality is that people who are happy, emotionally stable, high on life, and who never get sick are the ones consuming a cholesterol high-fat diet with a predominant focus on nutrient-dense animal products. And the only people who can actually commit to making their diets fall into this direction, even at like a 70% alignment as God intended, are for the very few of us who have a strong spine to have personalized sovereignty intact. The reason why your health is more important than any of these talking points that you spend your time scrolling on these multiple social media platforms ad nauseum purporting from, if you don't even have your own autonomy of your biological boundaries, then how the fuck are you going to talk to others about their nation's boundaries as you meme about immigration for 14 hours a day? It's retarded. I actually know a lot of these hypocritical imbeciles who took the vaccine because some half-ass excuse about seeing their family or losing their job, as if your personal respect and independence is less important, who at the same time expect others to treat them with any modicum of respect whatsoever, when you don't have the self-respect to tell poisoners no to their poison. Like, if you took that vaccine, I have zero respect for you. You literally are not a human being to me, and we can never be friends. And I only wish my parents were not so brainwashed in allowing me to take all these public school required vaccines in the United States. This is why none of your conspiratorial rabbit holes you dived into, exposing of pedophilia in our leadership, Israel occupation inside of our government, white nationalist revolutionary cringing on Twitter, financial guru pyramid scheming, masculinity coping, all of these things to commiserate and cope with the fact that you're a dying animal. None of all of that ever amounts to anything if you're also not sunbathing seasonally, eliminating toxic additives and seed oils, finding a local source for grass-fed organs and raw dairy, and if you're also not procreating with a significant other who has a shared goal of being healthy together and want to pass that on, that same positivity onto their children, none of all of these deep beliefs actually matter. All of the information and belief systems that you have don't matter if you aren't an actual healthy individual yourself. It's all pony talk designed to try to create a large splash, and it's unconsciously a desire in the first place because you don't want people to recognize how sick of an animal you are. You are dying and you're telling the world about your political opinions. Because I would argue that there's no processing of baggage and trauma without first putting the correct set of nutrients inside of your body. It all starts from there. And almost everything modern man swallows is artificial or chemically induced. It's all sickness. All of it is heavily denatured. And this causes a faulty starting position in the first place to operate from, because you're not even treating your own body as an economy that needs to be nourished. You think bacteria is bad. You think cholesterol is unhealthy. You think fat is going to clog your arteries. You think being emotional is being feminine. You think being masculine is being rude or being muscular. You believe that there's a certain degree of required or necessary vaccines. You believe that your body needs vegetables. You believe all of this convoluted shit because you've never once thought for yourself. And because you're afraid of thinking for yourself, you're protesting with these goofy movements that are masquerading independence from the system. They're all just different sheep of a different color. I look at a conservative and then I look at a liberal and I see no difference. You can talk about how one side is normalizing drag queen story hours and endorsing public education, but you fast forward to today, there are suddenly just as much and actually more homosexual and transgender influencers on the right because it's all bullshit. Seeing a woman who is anorexic to me is the same as seeing a woman who is pursuing bodybuilding at the gym and injecting herself with steroids. They're both incredibly unhappy and do not understand what is naturally sound and proper for themselves because they've both been conditioned by these false teachers that we collectively worship as authorities backed by science. And scientism is the biggest religion of them all. In the same way during the Salem witch trials and the rounding up of alternative denominations during the reign of Torquemada, every time there was approved consent to burn people at the stake for not being Christian enough by these rabid fundamentalists, they always repeated that we must first ask the preachers. we must ask these authoritarians, which at that time was incredibly contaminated due to the symbiotic relationship and bribery they held with the state. So what ended up happening is that the preachers literally were burning their personal enemies and the dissenters of specific political figures at the stake. All they had to do was simply claim that these people were possessed by demons and that this was the will of God. And today, this is no different. But instead, we repeat, asks the scientists. Anytime there's any sort of solution-oriented problem, especially in regard to curing disease, illnesses, depression, and suicidality, the first thing we all seek out are the doctors to heal us when they don't even have the tools to do so, because they are also duped and brainwashed by the same educational system that is traumatizing us. They're patients with the drugs and incorrect diet that's actually killing us every day. And the reason why nobody's able to think with autonomy about what they put in their own bodies that would heal them is because we believe in this psychological operation. Absolutely none of your beliefs and opinions matter at all because you are mentally sick and brainwashed from actually having independent thought in the first place. The messenger matters, and every person delivering their political speeches and deep resounding thoughts about socioeconomic and cultural affairs, man, they better first have vibrant energy permeating from them from a home of love. Like, they better actually be healthy. And 9 out of 10 times, this simply is not the case. 9 out of 10 times, people are choosing convenience over health, which means a brain full of puss and toxic metals. 9 out of 10 times, the person is more defensive towards actual holistic wisdom and hearing truth because they would rather chug down slop and stubbornly normalize the drugs and junk that they put inside of their bodies. There is zero self-respect or conscientiousness about their own personal autonomy, yet they hold these extreme beliefs so adamantly. It doesn't make any sense. And on top of that, they expect to be taken seriously. And these sick and malnourished zombies are only taken serious by the unserious, which is so many people, which only reinforces their delusion as influencers. But to highly successful people outside the system, the obnoxiousness displayed is simply an exhibition of antinatalism and self-depreciation, which is why all of them come from broken families and they're creating that same broken pattern into their own lives and their household, which is why sick people always want you to consume the same shit that they are slopping down. And they also shame you with either cultural references or fake science to make themselves feel less sick and wrong about their decision making. Because that's all they have. They're actually grasping at straws to those of us who choose health. They're incredibly envious that you had the courage to think for yourself. They are jealous of your gonads. They are jealous of your brain and how healthy it is. And they are jealous that you haven't destroyed your ability to trust your gut. Because, as a matter of fact, their gut is literally destroyed. That's all I have to say. Consume only the best of the best for 3 months, and then come check back in with me. See how you feel. You'll see that everything I just said is correct, and that you've made the right investment by prioritizing your internal health.
I've got to go because I've just got a notification of an appointment kind of thing. Not that it's any of your business. Anything society says, do the opposite. Yeah, I know what you mean.
What questions could Ancestry help you answer? Find out today.
I'm sick of these ads. YouTube or Google or whatever it is.
Waiting.
Actually expect you to pay them so that you don't have to watch the adverts. No chance. I wouldn't even pay to stop the adverts if it only cost me 1 penny. If I don't want to watch adverts, I don't want to watch them. Simple, innit?
Waiting.
I'll find an app anyway later.
What if you
I don't know.
drive?
They might have set it up so that you can.
What's up, guys?
Yeah, Arthur Conley. I mean, I like the guy. I don't agree with absolutely everything he says. Word choices and certain things, you know. That's just me. Check him out anyway. I've tagged his channel on the title here. Did I get a link for that? I'm going to go in 12 minutes and then I'll come back and do another live stream. I might even call it open chat. I hope you're all having a good day anyway, if you can call it that. I'm just putting, yeah, this is a link to this video I'm watching now, and then I'm going to go. It's getting a bit warm here. It's nearly 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a bit, seems a bit grey. Yeah, anyway, I'm going to watch this and then I'm going to go.
What's up, guys? If you want to be healthy, happy, successfully pair bonded, experience true freedom, and be fully alive, do exactly the opposite of what the mainstream pushes onto your life. If you want to live without diseases, never get vaccinated and never visit the doctor's office. If you want to be high on life and wake up every day with exuberance in your heart, don't go to parties and do not chase status. If you want to find the love of your life, your soulmate, and experience authentic and vibrant, passionate love towards raising children together as one, do not take advice from these dating coaches and relationship gurus. If you want to live every day knowing that you are totally liberated and a true independent thinker deep inside of your bones, reject all of schooling and all government-sanctioned vocations. Don't join the military. Do not enlist in law enforcement. Don't become a community board member. It's all derangement and satanically twisted sickness. If you want anything positive in your life, do the exact opposite of whatever the vast majority of people consume and accept as normal. Because the medical and pharmaceutical industry was created to make you sick with deadly poisons. Nightlife culture and partying was designed for momentary escape from the rat race rather than actual liberation from the system itself. Dating coaches and relationship gurus, the entire red pill, I should add, is led by emotional vampires who are unable to come to terms with their low status in the sexual market, so instead profit off of lonely and confused men because they're all either divorced single parents or childless unfuckable losers. And finally, and most importantly, the architects of this culture have told us that we should get status confused with actual happiness, which is determined by academic success in climbing the corporate ladder, which, by the way, is just a $5 word form of saying demonic social conditioning to kill your spirit. You get to feel good if we elites approve of your success, that we actually decide. You absolute fucking slave. And I'm not just saying this to be antithetical or attention seeking, but I actually do live this way. I do exactly the opposite of whatever the world tells me. The New World Order tells us to consume a diet based on vegetables and carbohydrates as their main energy source. So I literally don't eat vegetables or carbohydrates. I don't even like muscle meat that much. Like I see this.
Yeah, don't buy into everybody else's BS. I don't think, as far as I know, I don't. I don't buy into your BS, Sam, Bill, Tom, Dude, Olive, Smokey, or anybody else's. No thanks.
Fake obsession and this obsession of getting enough protein. I mean, and look, that's better than veganism, but I pretty much am on a 90% fat, organs, and dairy diet. Why? Because I feel beyond high on life. The brain is 60% fat, and 90% of that fat is cholesterol. Maybe your body needs tons of butter to function properly. Like I've healed a lot of people's depression, anxiety, and irritability just by telling them to stick with this high-fat and bacteria-advocating diet, regardless of their political dispositions and their causes, because none of that shit matters. It's secondary to actually your well-being, which requires you to prioritize independent thinking. Because you can only make these changes if you think for yourself, because that's not what the mainstream preaches, which is why we're all biochemically fucked. Like, how the fuck is anyone supposed to feel happy if they can't even think clearly? Their entire nervous system is more or less paralyzed in a false holding pattern. And this is why every social media platform you see endless content surrounding the theme of masculinity coping. You know, masculinity in and of itself is a good thing, which is only possible if your nerves are intact and you have a healthy budding testosterone, which is only possible, once again, if you have enough cholesterol. And because nobody does, you have either the red pill or the manosphere, which is, by the way, a really weird word, by the way. It's very autistic and cringe. That word, it feels totally forced, which is why everyone in the community feels like some awkward teenager that wasn't invited to the party, but shows up and presents himself anyways. And I've always wanted to share this. That word tells me a lot about the movement in and of itself, which is why inevitably what you see with these neurotic personalities, these types of people, is that they always end up encouraging you to shave your head, grow out your beard, and get jacked. All to look like an emotionally stunted and malnourished wannabe alpha male. Come off as heavy metal and badass, bro. The women are going to love it. Right. It is so hilarious. No wonder these people are so unsuccessful in the dating market. It looks creepy. And the reason why they don't see that it looks creepy is because their wits aren't intact. They all end up going overseas to fornicate with some third world trash that are so economically destitute that they'll pretend to be enamored by your masculinity code. But there's a reason at the same time why that shit just doesn't work with white women in the Western world or in East Asian countries like South Korea, Japan, and multiple provinces in China. That shit just doesn't pass. It looks cringy, and you look like an overcompensating dork. The game that they push is only effective on discarded freak shows and prostitutes because even their beauty standards aren't based on actual biochemically sound eroticism. They're actually having sex with the opinions of other men. And when you think about it, it's really fucking gay. You know, and look, the reason why this is so difficult is because I think the hardest thing for most people to accept is that they want to believe that they're a part of some counterculture. Whether they're utilizing a political disposition or preaching about relational dynamics with these memorized red pill talking points, whether they're exposing even Jewish supremacy inside of the state, or whether they're consuming this, what do you call it, tradcon meme culture, this circle jerk slop. Most human beings, they get their vehemence from a sense of inner tribal conquest. And that only actually alienates them further from true self-actualization because they want to appease the tribe, which is the same way that mainstream gets you. It's an extension. But guess what? The other side that you preach against with all this animus and protest on the streets to minimize their ideology, they feel that they're the counterculture towards human liberation as well. You're not a part of some underground movement. In fact, you may not be aware of it. You're unconscious, but you are the mainstream. You're a part of the mainstream. You're not underground. You're not the counterculture. Like, I'm friends with a lot of the leaders who are exposing hypocrisy inside of our government. Like, we're actually friends. We message each other. I have a lot of these guys' numbers. Look, I appreciate that a lot of them, they do have this noble purpose and they put their effort onto dispelling lies that those in power have over the people. And I respect that. But for the most part, a lot of these people, they're just participating on clapping for controlled opposition. And I started this channel to speak my mind, not grift an audience by repeating the talking points of any community. But 99% of these influencers are just meme posting bitches gossiping in the cafeteria. And I want you to be the guy who isn't even inside the school. I want you to be the guy who's too busy in the rushes of young love and adventure. Like, I cringe whenever I see these super large Twitter accounts who are, of course, always anonymous, and they're so bold about their identity and their cause. Like, that shit is so unoriginal, and I always choose to burn every single one of those bridges in front of me. I don't give a fuck who it is. If we don't vibe, then honestly, my style, good riddance forever. Because I never want to be a spokesperson for any community. It's just not my style. And I'm sorry to burst your bubble of self-righteousness, but your bravado of revolution just doesn't impress me. And the bottom line is that if you're not holding me back from, doing whatever I feel like doing and being authentically myself, then we're cool. But most of these movements who consider themselves to be the counterculture are repressing that. So my message to you is to stop trying to fit in. Because you're trying to fit into a brainwashed populace who kowtows to an entirely fake set of standards that are designed to relegate you as pawns on the chessboard. If you're still trying to fit in, you never grew up because you never had the courage to stand up on your own against groupthink. Because when you do so, It's obviously a catch-22 dilemma, which is why if you want to be considered as successful and to gain applause from the mob, you have to hate yourself, which means it's not worth it. Obviously, growing up is taking life into your own hands. Growing up is trusting yourself over these programmed authoritarians who actually have no idea what they're talking about. Because you end up prioritizing finding peace, and you get solace in that over keeping up with the Joneses. And it's the same Joneses, by the way, who consume seed-oiled fast food slop and get vaccinated at the drop of a hat at every turn. So what I say is, be the outcast, be the renegade, be the black sheep, be the outlaw. Don't be liked. Be like Jesus. I don't care what the Romans think of me. I don't care what the entire synagogue who owns all the infrastructure thinks of me. I don't care about their Babylonian banking. I don't care if they have these satanic law enforcement to knock on my door under their thumb. No different than the law enforcement today, by the way. They're just an extended arm of the state. I don't care who mocks me and who ridicules me based on a malicious and fallacious worldview in the first place. And I don't even care if they decide to crucify me. So be it. I'm not accepting your backwards inverted bullshit. And this applies to whatever they end up normalizing into the mainstream. That's half the reason everyone even respects Jesus, including all these secular normies. They still respect his providence and unshakable commitment to being real and speaking the truth that was inside of his heart. That's why we look at him as the King of Kings, because he said, you can kill me, I'm still gonna be real. And that's all I wanna be. Even if the entire church, they oust you, and the entire so-called Christian community online moral policing you with Puritanism, whatever, even if all that is against you, you got to keep it a stack. You have to realize that the mainstream is here to poison you. If something is mainstream, it is by definition a psychological operation. It is by definition a lie, and its purpose is to separate you from true health and freedom. I promise. The pipeline that we've been raised under is to attend school, then go to university, then search for a job, and then find a humble home to raise a family in. The mainstream version of that today is to become brainwashed by a set of government-oriented morals, chase vain status and clout at the cost of your own sanctity, don't do anything you actually enjoy or love, and then to find an overpriced tiny property that the bank actually owns to pay off for the next 40 years. For what? For a fellow social media brainwash and attention-seeking fatherless female who will only divorce you and use the state as a blockade for child visitation? Like, is this what you want? Is this what you imagine your life would look like when you're daydreaming within reason and effort when you're young? Because this is the life script for the average male in the current year. And this is what all your peers are chasing because they're afraid of being ostracized from the cabal of satanic pedophiles, whose greatest joy, by the way, is in torturing you and normalizing values that are antithetical to your gut and true core values. Listen, guys, life is a one-time ride. And I see everyone dictating all of the events of their journey based on a system that wants to kill them. So do the opposite. Be free. End the cycle of mainstream abuse by not passing the torch down that is handed on to you. Because those torches, they masquerade as forms as conventional success. That's what you have to be careful about. Don't get vaccinated, drink raw milk, have tons of sex, grow out your hair, exit out of the rat race, be like Jesus, and think for yourself. Peace.
Right, I'm going to go to my channel. Most of the, at least 90% of the videos I watch are on this particular playlist. I'll show you that. I don't know what order you'll see the videos in. This one here. That one, I'll put a link to it if I can get it. If it, yeah.
What's up, guys? If you want to be healthy, happy, successfully pair bonded, experience true freedom, and be fully alive, do exactly the opposite of what the mainstream pushes onto your life. If you want to live without diseases, never get vaccinated and never visit the doctor's office. If you want to be high on life and wake up every day with exuberance in your heart, don't go to parties.
Yeah, well, yeah. First one on the left. It's called Stuff I'm Watching or Have Watched. Yeah. Anyway, I've got to, well, I don't have to. I mean, I could wait a couple of hours, but I've got something I really need to go and do. You have a nice day. Yeah. And I'm ending here. I'll be back in an hour or two.